My name is Chuck Peil, and I'm one of the founding members and head of business development and strategic partnerships for Real Effects. We're an animation studio located out of Dallas, Texas. We also have a studio in Santa Monica. So 20-year-old studio, now making our own feature films. 20 years ago, there was four guys that got together. There's two original partners, Dale Carmen and David Needham, and then myself and another guy by the name of Brandon Olderberg got together, and it was one of those unique moments. I call it alchemy, and you know that the chemistry of the four people that got together, there was something about it that was unique. And one of the unique things is we all had a big vision. Here we were in Dallas, Texas, not necessarily the hotbed of entertainment at that time, 20 years ago. And within hours, we were declaring our desire and staking our claim that we were going to make our own animated feature films one day. And then we thought that there was better ways to do things, more efficient ways to do things. And that was it. We set our goal. Now, I'm also going to, if everybody tells you had a business plan right from the beginning, they're lying to you. We knew where we wanted to be. And so ultimately it was, how do you get there? And what's the path? And what's the realistic path? In Dallas, we have a very strong animation production community and just a commercial spot production, lots of advertising agencies, gaming companies. So there was a thriving business that allowed us our first light. And that's where we started. It was a service business, creating commercials. One of our partners likes to say, anything for a buck during those days. And really was just building the foundation of our studio. And that was really the start of it. We knew that the commercial business could sustain us. But we did have a general framework of an idea. We didn't have the business plan set. We didn't know exactly the path. We looked at a lot of the other animation studios that are creating their own films at the time, and part of what we were looking at is, okay, what did they do right, and what is another way of possibly doing things that may be unique to us in our area. Being in Dallas was both kind of the bane of our existence for a while, but also ended up being the best thing in the world. Bane being that it wasn't West Coast or East Coast. We were in the central part of the United States. But ultimately, that became the best thing that ever happened to us as a studio, because we didn't have any predispositions on how to grow. And if you don't have predispositions, you innovate. And out of innovation comes, inspiration and ways to do things a bit different. And so the city, the state have been great supporters of our quest. And that first leg, I like to liken things to movie references. So I'll use Back to the Future. Our general business plan that we felt was the way to go was fairly simple. There was a flux capacitor. That 1.21 gigawatts came from three legs of our business. First leg, commercial and short form business. And that's what we started with. The second leg is, how do we parlay and leverage that and move up towards long form service? Working with the studios, ultimately introducing ourselves and making our way west to Hollywood and working with some of the larger studios and creating content based upon their brands. So we went from short form to long form, and we felt ultimately if we were able to make that leap, but maintain the commercial side of our business, that would help us move into our third leg, which is content and films that we own and are creating ourselves. And that's really the phase we're in right now. I actually, we did this 20 years ago. We started 20 years ago. And I have been telling people that it feels like we're a startup again. We're just a 20-year startup. We're at the final, not the final phase, but we're at the phase we knew we'd be at. So there wasn't a single trigger. There were multiple smaller triggers along the way. And there were benchmarks that allowed us to say, okay, now we're ready for this next phase. Early on, if you look at historically, for us, the first thing we had to do is really claim our spot in character animation, and then that started in commercials. There's a million moves that allowed us that navigated us and moved us where we're at right now. But one of the early tipping points for us was Hasbro. Believe it or not, there was an ad agency nearby, and everything we ever did, whether it was a commercial spot production and creating ads, doing music videos in those early days, we always went over 100%. We were delivering 200%. We were always over-delivering, pushing the creative, pushing the technical boundaries, and that really came from the core of the team. That's just the way we always thought it should be done. We didn't think there was any other way. We never took anything for granted. And but also all the team, the artists and that started to collaborate with us and work with us also pushed the boundaries. And we did the same thing with the commercials. This ad agency we've been working with for a very long time landed one of the biggest accounts they'd ever landed, the boys' toys business for Hasbro. We were probably 7 years into the life of a studio. I'd say we were about 45 or 50 people, and we were growing pretty crazy pace at that stage. And there was this moment when we had been creating all the commercials and actually formed a relationship with them where we took all their business and we pulled the team together, brought the director, turnkeyd it, and we're delivering not only what they wanted, but we're getting involved early in the process at the white paper stage and helping the agency come up with concepts that they would then pitch to Hasbro. We didn't need our name over it on it. We were really kind of an invisible creative department in a way for the ad agency. It was a completely different way of looking at things. At that time, the agency business was, and it continues to go through a lot of changes, a lot of challenges. They were scaling down, and we as a studio felt that we'd always seen commercials come to us when they wanted to do post work, and when that commercial came to us, there were so many creative choices that would have been better, or that if they would have just talked to us early in the process, we could have delivered so much more. And every studio's gone through, every animation or VFX studio. So with them we said, why don't you get us involved a little bit early? This is a little radical. The traditional process is you do this, and then you hire us. But if we're the final step, doesn't it make sense to maybe bring us in early and we can provide some guidance? And they did. And not only did they do that, but we were helping them concept spots, et cetera. And so it caught the attention of Hasbro corporate because there was an uptick in their categories of business. The ad agency was really doing well with Hasbro, and but they were having a challenge that we helped them problem solve. And it was this one particular moment when they said, we're trying to promote the boys' toys business, but there's a lot of limitations in what you can do because of fantasy advertising. I guess it's something to do with how you advertise with kids, and you can only show so much a single toy. And so we said, well, in one of our brainstorming sessions, well, why don't you just advertise GIJoe.com, make it like a movie, and make it feel like it's a real movie, and then people going to GI Joe. It was a big, brilliant moment. At least they thought so. That wasn't my idea. It was one of the creative guys, but I'll take credit for it now. And the agency loved it. They pitched it. And next thing you know, we were creating a 60-second animated, all character-driven spot that felt like a trailer for a film. And that response was so profound at Hasbro that they said, we need to make it. Now we need to make that movie. So here we were, this little animation studio, little engine that could, really the tail wagging the dog in a positive way, saying, geez, if we were doing this, how about we look at it this way? Just a completely different way to look at it. Ultimately, that resulted in creating our first long-form piece and we had to fight for it, by the way. So they said, this has got such a great response, we have to deliver something in the fall. And a piece called Spy Troops, 44-minute animated film was born, and that they were going to give away as part of a Christmas promotion with two of the main characters. Well, we thought we were in, but we didn't realize that's not the way it worked. So once the producers out in Hollywood, at that time we didn't have a studio out in Santa Monica. They said, well, that's great. We're going to go bid it out to all the normal, cats and all West Coast shops. And so even though we had created this spot, that wasn't the shoon. It wasn't we didn't get the glass slipper yet, and so. We had to fight for it, and there's all kinds of stories of how that happened. I can go off on one really funny one, but not only did we have to insert ourselves and fight to get the chance to submit our character test, but ultimately we were kind of behind the curveball on it, and in a miracle move that at the very end we came in the first place and got it, and everything about it was impossible. Barely any budget. 6 months to do 44 minutes of all CG content, no scripts, Everything about it was impossible. And of course, we were sitting around this cardboard box, which is our boardroom table at the time, and of course, everybody said yes, because this was our moment. This is that moment to be able to leap from what we knew was theory, and yes, we can do it, to show that we could actually do it. And we delivered it. It was a great hit for them, and that was one of our kind of our first moves. And that then parlayed into a series of other moves, including one that really came before. Right now people are seeing the fruit, like Freebirds and the Book of Life that comes out October 17th. But ultimately, moves like this, that was 10, 15 years before our first film, were critical. We made the choice before that, And so this set up our machine to be able to have the ability to do our own film. I'd say the second big one was a relationship with William Joyce that we had developed early on. And this was one of those moments where, again, we were in Dallas, Texas, and we'd reached out to him in a creative way, sent him this really cool package that Brandon had whipped up, and reached out to him and invited him to come to the studio, and he loved what he saw. He called us a playground. He said, this amazing creative playground sitting here. And we issued him a challenge, and the challenge was, give us one of your properties, something, a character, whatever that is, and let us breathe life into it. And we'll show you what we can do. But more importantly, we believe in the world that you've created. And, keeping the story short, ultimately that was a character called the Man in the Moon. And we created an animated short, one of those other moments in our company that sat around our cardboard box table and said, this is a high prospect as far as a very relevant artist at the time, and still is, Bill Joyce. Very visible in the world. Meet the Robinsons was, I think, just getting teed up or right around that time. And so we had not met anybody with that kind of a background before as far as the arts go. And he said, hey, why don't we do Man in the Moon? And that was the moment we said, we've got to do this. We've got to put the heft of our studio behind it. And in 1996, this was 1996, we I wouldn't say gambled the company, but we put everything on the line and created an animated short called The Man in the Moon. That was, at that time, we couldn't afford all CG, didn't have the rendering power. We were borrowing everybody's computers, hooking them up, sticking them on every nook and a cranny just to get this done. So this was both miniatures and CG characters. And also, ultimately, that opened up the doors to us. Everybody saw it. John Lasseter saw it. Chris Wedge saw it. Everybody in the industry saw it. And through that relationship, we parlayed that into a partnership with Bill Joyce. And out of that came Guardians of Childhood. And Guardians of Childhood ultimately became Rise of the Guardians for DreamWorks. So if you look at it, when I say the flux capacitor, here's leg one, and here's our short form service business, and here's our long form. And then we did features. It wasn't as if features just popped up and we identified one to move into. That groundwork was, that last leg was being laid well in advance of that. And in fact, we had a choice, and it was a tough choice to make at the time. As a studio, we had this amazing property of Guardians of Childhood. We knew that there was a lot of real possibilities with it, and but there were other filmmakers also interested in it, and we had it with Bill in our joint partnership. We were moving it forward. We wanted to be very deliberate about it. So the choice was, could we make it? At that time, 2 other studios were vying for it, and DreamWorks was one of them. And at the end of the day, this is where kind of the separation of church and state happens. This is that balance of art and commerce. We had to realistically look at that and say, if we kept it at that time in our studio's life, could we have delivered the type of film that world demanded? And we felt that we couldn't at that time. We knew we would. So the discipline, out of that was a tough one. There was a lot of debate. It was very heated internally in a positive way, saying, do we take this? But we've seen other companies take on something way too early in their life and fail. And so this was too big. So we ultimately sold it to DreamWorks, and we were producers on it, and we continued our path. And in that, we were able to also then start to do work with DreamWorks on a lot of their other properties, ancillary work, and that was the second big move. So ultimately, it was kind of two things, I would say. A little short form thing that opened up our ability to do it. That got the attention of Bill. We reached out, we looked at that, and then made what we feel was the right strategic move at that time to say, no, we got to wait a little bit longer because we didn't feel our infrastructure was ready yet, because we didn't want to come out with just one hit. We wanted to be able to have a sustained third leg of our own films.